Emily Carter learned early how to trust quietly. It showed in the way she listened more than she spoke, in how she folded her expectations into careful corners and carried them without complaint. At 26, she believed steadiness mattered more than fireworks, and that belief had led her to Ryan Mitchell. He was warm, funny, and unfailingly charming in public, someone who knew how to fill silences and make people feel chosen. With him, Emily imagined a life that would grow slowly and last. They met 3 years earlier at a community fundraiser, both volunteering at the same table, both laughing at the same small mistakes. Ryan admired her composure. Emily admired his ease. Their relationship unfolded without drama. They moved in together after a year, adopted routines that fit like old sweaters, and spoke about the future in practical terms. Marriage wasn't urgent, but it was assumed. Emily liked that assumption. It felt safe. Sophia Blake was there from the beginning, woven into Emily's life like a bright thread. They had met in college, bonded by late nights, and shared ambitions, and carried that closeness into adulthood. Sophia was bold where Emily was reserved, quick to speak and quicker to dream. She celebrated loudly and grieved dramatically. People noticed her when she entered a room, and she liked being noticed. Emily never begrudged her that. Friendship, she believed, wasn't a competition. Sophia became part of the couple's orbit naturally. She joined them for dinners, knew Ryan's favorite takeout orders, and teased him like a sister might. Ryan responded easily to her energy, laughing a little louder when she was around. Emily noticed, but she trusted the structure of her life. Trust had always rewarded her before. Still, small changes began to collect like dust on a shelf. Easy to ignore, impossible to miss once you look closely. Ryan checked his phone more often, angling the screen away without thinking. He came home later than usual, explanations casual and unconvincing. When Emily asked about his day, his answers shortened, his attention drifting. She told herself it was stress. Work had been demanding. People went through phases. Sophia, on the other hand, grew more attentive. She called Emily daily, asked careful questions about her relationship, listened with a seriousness that felt new. She offered advice without being asked, always framed as concern. "You deserve to feel secure," she would say, her voice soft, her eyes steady. Emily appreciated the care. She didn't see the hunger beneath it. One evening, as rain streaked the windows and the city hummed below, Emily cooked dinner alone. Ryan had texted to say he'd be late again. Sophia arrived instead, shaking water from her hair, carrying a bottle of wine. They ate at the small table by the window, talking about work and old memories. Sophia watched Emily closely, as if measuring her resilience. "You've changed," Sophia said gently. "You're quieter." Emily smiled. "Maybe I'm just tired." Sophia reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "If you ever feel like something's wrong, promise you'll tell me." Emily promised. Promises were easy then. A week later, Emily met Margaret Mitchell for coffee. Margaret was Ryan's aunt by marriage, a woman with calm eyes and an observant nature. She had always treated Emily with a careful kindness, as though she saw more than she said. They spoke about family and weather, about nothing and everything. As they parted, Margaret hesitated. "Take care of yourself," she said. Her tone weighted. Emily nodded, puzzled, unaware that concern often arrives before explanation. At the tea home that night, Ryan was distant, distracted by a message he didn't explain. When Emily asked if something was wrong, he kissed her forehead and told her not to worry. She wanted to believe him. Wanting felt easier than knowing. The unease grew subtle roots. Emily found herself replaying conversations, searching for missed meanings. She noticed how Sophia spoke about Ryan with a familiarity that felt too intimate, how she defended his absences before Emily could question them. None of it was proof. It was just enough to unsettle. One afternoon, Emily stopped by Sophia's apartment unannounced, carrying a bag of groceries and an apology for not calling first. The door was unlocked. Laughter floated from inside. Ryan's laughter unmistakable. Emily froze, heart stuttering, then stepped back into the hallway. She told herself she was being foolish. Friends could laugh together. There were a dozen explanations kinder than the truth. She left without knocking. That night, Emily lay awake beside Ryan, listening to his breathing. She studied the familiar curve of his face, the person she had chosen and been chosen by. Trust, she reminded herself, was an action, not a feeling. It required courage. She would not become suspicious without cause. She would not let doubt reshape her. Yet as dawn thinned the dark, a quiet certainty settled in her chest. Something was shifting, moving beyond her reach. She didn't know what it was yet, only that the life she believed in was no longer as solid as it once seemed. Emily rose quietly, made coffee, and watched the city wake. The future still existed, but it no longer felt assured. Somewhere between loyalty and truth, a choice waited for her, one she wasn't ready to face, but could no longer ignore. Emily tried to behave as if nothing had changed. She answered emails, folded laundry, smiled at Daniel when he spoke. Yet her attention drifted, tugged by a quiet current she could not see but felt everywhere. Each time she stepped outside, she was aware of Marcus's house across the street. Not because he was always there, but because he might be. When they met again, it was unplanned. Emily was struggling with a box of old books she meant to donate when Marcus crossed the street without hesitation. "Need a hand?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded. "If you don't mind." Inside his living room, the air smelled faintly of coffee and paper. The space was simple and orderly, reflecting a life shaped by intention rather than habit. Marcus placed the box down carefully, as if respecting not just the weight of it, but what it contained. "You read a lot," he said, glancing at the titles. "I used to," Emily replied. "Somewhere along the way, I stopped making time." He looked at her, not with pity, but with understanding. "It's easy to forget the things that used to feel like us." The sentence lingered. Emily felt it settle into a place she hadn't known was exposed. They sat, not close, not distant. Conversation unfolded naturally, drifting from books to work to the quiet negotiations adults make with their own expectations. Marcus spoke about moving often, about learning how to make unfamiliar places feel temporary yet meaningful. Emily spoke about marriage without naming its fractures, describing instead the shape of companionship she had imagined. "I don't think people stop wanting to be seen," Marcus said thoughtfully. "They just get used to not asking." Emily looked down at her hands. Sometimes asking feels like begging. The honesty startled her. She hadn't planned to say it. Marcus didn't rush to fill the space it left. He let it exist, which somehow felt like care. When she left, the air outside felt sharper. Emily walked home slowly, her thoughts loud and insistent. She knew she had crossed a line, not an action, but an admission. She had allowed herself to be known. The realization frightened her more than any reckless impulse could have. That evening, Daniel talked about an upcoming trip, about the inconvenience of packing and the relief of routine hotels. Emily listened, nodding at the right moments. She considered telling him about her afternoon, about the conversation that had unsettled her. The words gathered and then dissolved. She wasn't sure how to explain something she barely understood herself. Days passed, and with them came restraint. Emily avoided unnecessary walks. Marcus respected the distance, greeting her politely but not lingering. The space between them felt deliberate, fragile. It was broken one rainy afternoon when Emily's car refused to start. Marcus noticed immediately, crossing over with his jacket pulled tight against the weather. He didn't assume. He asked, "Everything okay?" She exhaled. "Just my luck." They stood under the shelter of his porch as rain traced hurried lines down the steps. Marcus offered to call a mechanic he trusted. While they waited, conversation resumed, cautious at first, then deeper as the minutes stretched. "I keep thinking about what you said," Marcus admitted quietly. "About asking." Emily met his eyes. "I keep thinking about how easily you listened." The rain softened the world around them, muting the street, narrowing it to this shared pause. Emily felt the pull again, stronger now, threaded with awareness. This was the moment where choice mattered, where silence could become consent. "I should go," she said, though the words felt heavy. Marcus nodded, respect evident in the gesture. "I understand." The mechanic arrived. The spell broke. Emily thanked Marcus and drove away, her hands steady on the wheel despite the storm inside her. That night, she lay awake once more. She examined her feelings carefully, refusing to romanticize them. What she felt was not love, she decided, but recognition. The danger lay not in Marcus, but in what his presence revealed about her marriage. The thought brought both relief and grief. The next time they spoke, it was deliberate. Emily crossed the street herself, heart pounding with resolve. They stood outside, daylight clear and uncompromising. "I need to be honest," she said. "I value our conversations, but I'm scared of where they might lead." Marcus listened, as he always did. "So am I," he replied, "and I respect whatever boundary you need." The relief was immediate, tinged with sadness. They agreed to distance without bitterness, to let neighborly kindness replace the intimacy that had begun to grow. As Emily walked back home, she felt both lighter and heavier. She had chosen restraint, but the choice had confirmed the depth of what she had nearly allowed. The story was not over. She could feel that truth settling in. What came next would require more than distance. It would require courage and a reckoning she could no longer postpone. Emily discovered that restraint did not erase feeling. It sharpened it. In the days after she spoke to Marcus, she moved through her home with a heightened awareness of herself and of Daniel. Every sound, every habit, every silence carried weight. She noticed how quickly Daniel grew impatient when interrupted, how rarely he asked questions that did not lead back to his own concerns. She also noticed her own withdrawal, the way she paused before speaking, unsure whether her words would land anywhere meaningful. Distance from Marcus created space, but space invited reflection. Emily could no longer pretend that her restlessness had appeared out of nowhere. It had been cultivated slowly, nourished by years of unmet emotional needs. This understanding did not absolve her of responsibility. It clarified it. She had not betrayed Daniel in action, but she had stood at the edge of that possibility. The closeness she felt with Marcus had been real, and that reality demanded honesty, even if it frightened her. Daniel sensed the change before he understood it. He asked if she was tired, if work had been stressful. Emily answered carefully, choosing neutral truths. Yet the tension lingered, visible in the way she studied him, as if deciding something that could not be delayed forever. One evening, after dinner sat untouched between them, Emily spoke. "Do you ever feel like we stopped listening to each other?" Her voice was calm, but her hands trembled slightly. Daniel looked surprised, then defensive. "I listen. I'm just busy." "I know," she said, "but busy has become the only thing we talk about." Silence followed, heavier than the others before it. Daniel leaned back, considering her words with visible effort. "What are you saying, Emily?" "I'm saying I feel alone," she replied, "and I don't want to feel that way in my own marriage." The admission changed the air between them. Daniel did not respond immediately. When he finally spoke, his tone was quieter. "I didn't realize it was that bad." Emily nodded. "That's the problem." The conversation did not resolve everything. It could not, but it cracked open a door that had long been closed. For the first time in years, Daniel asked questions without checking the time. Emily answered without editing herself down to convenience. It was uncomfortable and unfinished, but it was real. Across the street, Marcus watched from his window as the Carters' light stayed on later than usual. He did not imagine their conversation, but he sensed a shift. He felt relief mixed with a restrained disappointment he refused to indulge. Caring, he reminded himself, did not always mean being close. Sometimes it meant stepping back fully. They crossed paths one final time, deliberately brief. Emily thanked him for his kindness, for the respect he had shown when it mattered most. Marcus returned the gratitude without expectation. "You did the right thing," he said simply. "So did you," Emily replied. They parted without drama, without promises, leaving the connection where it belonged, In acknowledgement rather than continuation, in the weeks that followed, Emily committed to the harder work ahead. Rebuilding attention required patience from both sides. Some days felt hopeful, others exposed old fractures. Yet she no longer felt divided within herself. She understood that emotional infidelity was not defined by secrecy alone, but by avoidance, by choosing comfort over truth. She had come close to that mistake, and the closeness itself had been a lesson point one morning as sunlight filled the kitchen. Daniel poured her coffee without being asked. It was a small gesture, but it carried intention. Emily met his eyes and smiled, not with certainty, but with resolve. Life resumed its rhythm, altered but honest. The neighborhood remained quiet. Marcus eventually moved away, leaving behind nothing but a memory that no longer ached. Emily carried forward something more lasting. The knowledge that intimacy demanded presence, and that choices made in silence could shape an entire life. The story did not end with perfect clarity or effortless forgiveness. It ended with awareness, with the courage to face what had been avoided, and with the understanding that love, when neglected, does not disappear. It waits.